Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Complete Sports Media's podcast. I'm your host, Darren Campbell, and we're really excited today. We're joined by a hitting guru that's going to come in and really tell us that something that's become his life's work. He really wants to be able to help people get into baseball and become better hitters. And there's so many millions of kids and people that are playing baseball and softball around North America and around the world that would love to get a little bit better at their hitting. So I'm glad to have Joey Myers joining me. Hey, Joey, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Darren, man. It's a pleasure to talk with the neighbor from upstairs.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, you're down in Fresno, and we'll talk about Fresno a little bit later, but I just want to have you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch. All you do. I know you're the founder of Hitting Performance Lab. You're a best-selling author on Amazon. You've got 4 books that you can tell us the names of. And yeah, just give us a little bit of a background to your history and coming into what you do.
Sure. So my one word or a couple word sentence is: we apply human movement principles that are validated by real science to hitting a ball. And we've used that tenet from the beginning because at the time we were seeing a lot of opinion-based stuff. It was, well, Ted Williams said this, or Tony Gwynn said that, or so-and-so expert guru said this, and I'm going to listen to him because of that. So we've really taken an approach that is more along the lines of the scientific method. It's raising a question, it's developing a hypothesis, what we think the answer to that question is, doing the research to see what either experiments or studies or data along the lines of what I think the answer to the question is, or maybe what it's not. Then you collect the data and you form a conclusion. So those 5 steps. And we've really tried to keep it along those lines and be a little bit more objective. Now, as humans, it's hard to be non-biased, but as well as we can stay objective about it. So that is the basic premise of hittingperformancelab.com. And then our moniker, or whatever you call it, unique selling proposition, is swinging smarter by moving better. So I started this journey back in 2005. I love, besides baseball and softball and hitting, I love fitness and I love human movement. And I started probably around that time, 2005, and I started to dive into getting certain certifications in training, whether that was helping people lose weight or helping athletes get stronger, or what I really fell in love with was helping athletes to move better. So if they came in and they had a shoulder issue or a hip issue or ankle or something, or maybe an issue they didn't know they had, I loved using the troubleshooting of seeing how we can either minimize pain, or if they had pain, we could send them to a physical therapist that's really good, or a chiro or massage therapist or whatever. And so that's also a part of what we do. It's almost like we reverse engineered the swing from a human movement perspective. And we look at the science side of movement, but then also look at its application too. So we're not just, I've heard people say, well, I don't see Dr. Serge Grakovetsky, who's a physicist and electrical engineer. He came up with the spinal engine. Well, I don't see Dr. Serge hitting a home run. How many home runs in the big leagues has Dr. Serge Grakovetsky hit? Well, that's not the point. The point is that he's brought science to basic human locomotion, and locomotion is where everything starts. And when we look from the center of the body out, and what we're doing is we're looking at what the science says, and then we go into the big leagues, and then we see how that plays out. And it becomes very clear once you get the principles of human movement, once you get those tenets and you see how it's applied, whether big, large, or sometimes not at all, can be improved on, things become much more in color with what we're talking about. And it's not just about opinion. So you mentioned the books. I mean, they can go to Amazon. You can just search my name, Joey Myers, and find those. But recently, so you mentioned the Catapult loading system, which was the Amazon bestseller. And that was published, I think, January 2017. In a year, became an Amazon bestseller. And we just released a new one called Swing Smarter, that basically Catapult loading system was all on the power side of hitting. So build more power, consistent power. And then swing smarter is more of an approach. It's an overall approach where we talk about the three different buckets of hitting. One is building more power. The other one's hitting more line drives. And then the last one is getting on time more often. So it goes in and kind of peppers through that, as I would if I were to work with a hitter for the first time. Almost the sequence I don't do this with everybody, but just in general nutshell, 80% of the time, the sequence that we go through step by step. So each chapter represents a specific principle, and we go into depth in those principles.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, no, I enjoyed them. I'm glad I was able to get a chance to read them before we could do this. And lots of things jumped out to me. I was really happy that you were able to get a lot of experts. You were able to break down a lot of Major League Baseball, some of the hitters, what they do well, what they don't do well, things like that. Who in Major League Baseball utilizes your system right now? Who does it the best? Who do you think that utilizes that Catapult system and swinging smarter, that type of thing?
Yeah, good question. Now, there are quite a few, but I will highlight a couple of them. One of them everybody probably knows, especially up there in Canada, is Michael Trout, Mr. Michael Trout from the Anaheim Angels, right? One of the best. Yeah. I was just talking to my son, who at our practice, we play a game called Last Man Standing. And Last Man Standing is more of a fielding game. And so they're supposed to field a ground ball cleanly, throw it cleanly to the coach who's on the other end. They have to throw it between belt to hat. So they pass if they can do that. So my son, the last couple of practices, has gotten second place. He hasn't gotten first yet. He's close. And I told him, you just got to keep working. And I told him the story of Mike Trout. And I said, his first year, he got Rookie of the Year. And I want to say, I could be wrong on this, but within those first 5 years, I think he came in second in the MVP. He got Rookie of the Year the first year, but he didn't get MVP. He might've been second. And then the second year, I think he got second again. And then maybe the third year he got second or first. But he was playing behind, he was scoring behind Miguel Cabrera, who one of those years he got the Triple Crown. I mean, most homers, highest average, and most RBIs, right? I mean, that's tough to get second. But I told him, I said, well, then what happened after that was like year 3 or 4, he got first. And then it's almost like every other year, he's getting first place as the MVP. So he's one of them. He does it very well. You could see from showing numbers to the downhill shoulder angle, the big three, and hiding the hands. You see his back elbow peeking out from behind him from the pitcher's view. So he does it very well. And most of these guys, they do it instinctively. They just somehow along the way figured it out. It could have been in Little League or whatnot. Bryce Harper, another example from the left side. They just figure it out early for whatever reason. And most of the hitters I work with, I would say maybe 30 to 40% have kind of figured it out. So we might have to add an element or two, but most of them don't. And we have to teach that into their system. One of the young ones I wanted to cover is Fernando Tatis Jr. A lot of people out there are following him. We had a good 2019. 2020 was pretty good too, I think. But he's a good young player that
he just signed the 14-year, $340 million deal there too. So very significant contract.
Exactly. And if you watch him, all those elements are there with him too. So again, I don't know if it's been taught into him, or I don't know if he figured it out along the way, but I'm starting to see more players like that. And one more player I want to jump in there is my team's the A's. I love the Oakland Athletics, grew up liking them. And I didn't know they lost the World Series in '88 to Kirk Gibson's, his floppy leg home run,
Right.
But
yeah.
In '89, they swept the Giants 4 games in the '89 World Series. And so I really fell in love
with the earthquake year. That was the earthquake year.
Yep. And I really fell in love with the A's at that point. But right now, and I don't know what happened to him. I wasn't really watching sports this last year just because of all the political stuff going on. But the games I did watch, I didn't see Chris Davis of the A's. I don't know if he got traded or if he was injured or whatnot, but Chris Davis, Khris, not the same
Chris, not the Baltimore guy.
Yeah.
Right.
But he uses it very, very well. And he's a small guy. He's 5'10". I mean, he's bigger than me. He's bulkier, but he's 5'10", I think it says 190 pounds or something like that. But he uses it very well. And again, small guys versus big guys. If the big guys use it, the small guys are in trouble if they're not using it. but we see it across all realms. We see big guys, small guys, we see girls, we see boys. Sierra Romero for the USSSA softball, professional softball, she uses it very well. And she's 5'6", I think 130 pounds or something like that. So you see it if you're looking for it.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of obviously very talented players. A lot of people have always said, "Oh, they're just born that way. They just naturally know how to swing." And I don't think that could be true, because we're not born with a baseball bat in our hands. Most of us aren't really learning the game very properly until we're 7, 8, 9 years old. We're out there playing maybe sooner, but you don't really know what's going on at a young age. But it's nice that people have been able to see some of these amazing swings, some of the guys that are getting MVPs, getting amazing contracts, a lot of success on the field, and being able to start implementing it and bringing it down to the youth. I was really impressed with one of the kids. I saw so many testimonials in your book, and it's probably the most testimonials I've ever seen in any book that I've ever read. And one of the testimonials that really stood out to me was from a kid. His father, the kid's name was Hudson Hawk White, and really young kid. I forget, maybe he was about 12, 13 years old or something. 14 years old. Okay. And he was, pretty small in stature. He was able to go to one of these home run showcases that they had in Texas at Globe Life Park. And he was able to hit some fantastic home runs. I think I saw him hit 11 home runs in a row during this video that I saw. And it was incredible to see the power that he could generate at such a small age, such a young age, and such a small stature. It was pretty incredible. And I'm glad that his dad, said, "Hey, we implemented this." He was able to really jump onto it, and it has produced the results.
Yeah, what was crazy about that, Darren, is that a lot of those testimonials, probably, I would say most of them, maybe there's a couple of them I might have asked, but most of them were all unsolicited. They emailed me. So Hudson's dad, Marty, he emailed me this in that article. I copy and pasted basically his response, and he had been using the system for 2 years. So he was one of the OGs, one of the originals with me when I probably first started this in 2013. I think January is when I started really getting into this material from Dr. Serge Grakowetsky and Thomas Myers and stuff. And so he sent that. And so we've been following him along the way. And I want to say that he just signed with a Texas school, or I think it was a Texas school, Texas U or Texas Tech or something.
I think I saw Oklahoma State, but
Oklahoma State. That's what it was.
Is that right? Yeah.
I knew it was somewhere Midwest somewhere, but he was absolutely, I think at the time at 14 years old, and it was the National Power Showcase. And that's I think it's Brian Delmonico's program. He has a national and international. And the international, they play at the Marlins Park, and everybody from around the world comes, and they have this big old giant thing. It's huge. And it's $2 to $3 grand per player to get into. And Hudson was up against that year in the 14U. Some probably more know, maybe not Hudson's name, but more know Blaze Jordan, who I think's got to be getting close to getting drafted, if not this year or last year, getting drafted. Big kid at the time when he was 14. I think he was 6'1", 215 pounds or something. And poor little Hudson's like, it said, 5'7", 135 pounds, and these two were competing against each other. And that was the first year I saw Blaze Jordan hit a ball or hit 2 balls over 500 feet. And again, they're using metal, and there's a lot of people going, well, that's juiced metal. Well, I don't care. 500-foot home runs, 500. So, okay, take the juice out of it. So what's he going to hit, a 450-foot homer? I mean, what are we talking about?
No ballpark's holding that. No ballpark's holding that, right? So.
If it was all about the bat, which I love that argument, it's all about the bat, it's juice bats. If it's all about the bat, then why isn't everybody doing that? Why isn't everybody hitting a 450-foot jack or a 500-foot jack if it's all about the bat, right? So I love that argument. But what was interesting about that, and it opened up a Pandora's box, because I think I put that article out the first time I did, and I got everybody and their mother saying, well, it's a juice bat. Oh, well, they're giving me all these excuses and giving me all these objections. And so I went back to Marty and had him confirm or deny some stuff and whatnot. And what was crazy is people say, well, the juice bat with Hudson. And I said, look at the guy's he's 5'7", 130 pounds. What are you kidding me? And then I said, and then Marty, I told Marty, and Marty goes, the kid can hit a 380-foot homer with a wood bat, with an old hickory wood bat. I mean, 385 foot at 135 pounds, that's pretty impressive. So that takes out the whole hot bat thing. You just put a hot bat in his hand and okay, maybe he can hit it 420 feet, 420 feet. I mean, what are we talking about here? And so I finally got to the point where I was telling these people, I said, you're really taking away from the hard work these kids are putting in, and shame on you type of thing. And so a lot of it, the chatter started to go away, but it's unbelievable what not only him, but many others, as you've read in the testimonials of the dads. And it's almost like I became a magnet to all these young, small kids, these little ones, these 68 pounders that are hitting the ball 180 feet. And they say, my kid is so small, he can barely get out of the infield. What do we need to do? And it was just interesting to see all these things come in unsolicited. I didn't ask for them.
It's fantastic. Yeah, no, I realized that you didn't ask for them. They just came in. And, I think a parent, when they see their kid go from, probably not hitting in the right spot, not being able to be successful, and then starting to implement the system. And as time goes on, they see a dramatic shift and change, and elevated in the batting order, and elevated in the, eyes of other teams, and having success. You want to, express your happiness and write a letter and say, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, that's what keeps me going. That's the big thing. So, and it's not so much anymore right now, the negative chatter going on. In the beginning, there was a lot of it, but really now, I mean, it's 98% positive like that. Really what it comes down to is I tell people, try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah. But at least if you try it out and you do the research, and if it does work, that's what you have to gain. But to just be an armchair quarterback and to say, well, this is not going to work, and this is not how I learned it, or this is not how I heard it, and you don't know what you're talking about, and how many homers have you hit in the big leagues, or how many base hits have you gotten in the big leagues? I said, that's not the point. And it's not my information. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I just stumbled onto it, and I was observant enough to know what I had stumbled onto. Almost like the gold rush, you get some gold and it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, it wasn't me creating it. It was just there. And I just saw it, and I was able to polish it up and bring it up to the surface for everybody to check it out.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, obviously you're from Fresno, which is Central California, known for a lot of things. I've spent a little bit of time there. I went to some mixed martial arts events there way back in the day. I actually went to a couple wineries. I think I went to your zoo once, a bunch of things, but it's really known for baseball, and definitely Fresno State has, had a lot of success. They won the national championship in 2008, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And you spent 4 years there with the college baseball team. How is that one of the highlights of your life, those 4 years, getting to be on that baseball team and have that college experience?
That was one of the best experiences of my life. Obviously the ones at the top are getting married and having kids. Those are obviously much more above, but time playing baseball with the friends from Little League up through high school, that was great, just because there was so much bonding that was involved with those guys. And a lot of those guys I'm still friends with today, all the way, some of them back to like 4th grade and stuff like that. But at Fresno State, it was completely different, because you're jumping into a circle of guys that maybe we had half a dozen that I knew that were freshmen coming in with me that I'd either played against or played with. So it was nice to have some of those guys that I knew, but it was completely different guys from all over California or from other states. Like we had a guy from Hawaii that we played with. We had a guy actually from Australia that came. He became a sidewinder. He was an outfielder, got converted into a sidewinder pitcher. The Aussie, we called him, because he was the only Australian there. But it was a great experience in that it was almost like a boot camp, where you are getting up during fall. You have practice every day. And your practices go from, in high school, 2 to 2.5 hour practices up to about 4 hour practices. So about an hour and a half more. And I was used to, in high school, being the first to the field. A buddy of mine were first to the field, and we were the last ones to leave in high school. But in college, everybody's like that. So if you want to be first to the field and last one to leave, well, a 4-hour day is normal. So now you're turning it into a 5 or 6 hour day, but you can't even do that because 3 days a week in the fall, you're lifting together as a team for an hour and a half. So you got 4 hours of practice, you got an hour and a half of training. And the other 2 days, you're waking up early. So you're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have your weightlifting after practice. So you got a late night. And then you got to turn around the next day, Tuesday, Thursday, and you got to come to the field. At the time, 6:30 was way early for me. It's not that early anymore, but it was super early for a teenager, moving into his teens and getting to the field. And it was running. It was early morning running, and it was long distance. Sometimes it was running hills. And then when it rains, you have to come out and tarp the field. So it was all these experiences. And the last one, the last big experience was a coaching change. So we had one of the best coaches in NCAA baseball, arguably Coach Bob Bennett. And he was at Fresno State for 34 years. Great coach, consistent coach. You knew what to expect every day when you got to the field. And then my last year was the current coach that's there now, Coach Batesel, was his first year. And the transition from a coach like Bennett into a coach like Batesel, and that was a challenge in itself, and that's probably a talk for another day. But all those challenges, which I love, and this is what I teach my kids and my hitting kids, is I say, we're playing baseball, we're practicing baseball, we're working on hitting, but what we're really doing is we're learning life lessons. We're learning life through hitting, how to make adjustments, how to problem solve, how to think ahead, how to learn these different lessons that will help you either if you're going to be employed by a company or you're going to have your own company and you're going to employ employees.
Nice. Right.
And that's really what it all comes down to with these young ones, is teaching them baseball, but it's not baseball, it's life through baseball.
Yeah, I'm glad you break it down like that, because so many of the teaching methods and things that kids learn, they don't realize that it can be transferable into so many aspects of life. It's not just that particular sport or that particular moment. There's so many things, and you realize that as you get older and start coming up against challenges. And luckily you've got some tools that you've learned from many aspects and other things. I talked about Fresno a little bit, but one of the most amazing parts about Fresno is how many baseball players have come from that area. It's incredible. California as a whole is an incredible hotbed, but to list some of the names that come from Fresno blows me away. I've got Bobby Bonds, Tom Seaver, Bobby Cox, Pat Corrales, Johnny Estrada, Laura Berg, Frank Chance, Tom Goodwin, Rex Hudler, Bobby Jones, Jim Maloney, just on and on and on. Just an incredible amount of guys come from that area. Why do you think that is? Is it just the weather? Is it just that you're playing so much of the year? Why do so many guys come from there?
Yeah, I think there's many factors. And I think at Fresno State, you mentioned a lot of those from Fresno State. Mark Gardner would be another one. And what was really fun was doing the alumni games where everybody would come back. And it gave us a chance as players to play these guys in a fun way, and that we could talk with each other and things like that. And then being on the other side, being an alumni, you get to be on the alumni side and get to go shoulder to shoulder with these guys and talk with them, and they get to share their stories and really cool stuff. I mean, listening to Tom Goodwin talk, and there's another guy, Terrence Frazier, that ended up playing in the big leagues during the strike shortened season. And Terrence is a big real estate guy around here locally. And to hear Terrence talk, Terrence is a big networker, big talker. And so he knows a lot of these guys and mixes it up with them. So it's really fun to hear the stories. But as for why the Central Valley, I think it comes in waves. Every year there seems to be, and when I say every year, I'm talking about like the freshmen, the sophomores, the juniors, the seniors in high school. There's these waves. Sometimes there might be a freshman, sophomore class coming up that are pretty good, but sometimes it's like freshmen and you got a junior class that they're coming up and they're really good, but there's always these waves coming through. There's never really a freshman through senior class that doesn't have a wave of talent that's coming through. And it's a combination, I think, of good weather. I think it's a combination of decent, maybe teaching instructors here. We have a lot of good hitting academy, or just academies in general, where they put teams together and things like that. DIB is an academy I really like. I really like what those guys are doing over there, and how they're teaching the kids and what they're teaching the kids. So I think just the farm system, and then a lot of the coaches in high school I've played ball with, a lot of the dads or the uncles or whoever have passed it down to the nephews or the sons or things like that. And so now there's guys that I played with that are great guys that now are ahead of these high school teams. And so all of us coming up together, and then now kind of going around, and I'm more of the in between. I'm between the lines, right? Those are the guys that are the lines. You're reading the lines. They're the high school coaches. And then I'm the one in the middle that's doing the private small groups that are helping make their job a lot easier, so they don't have to be so hands-on with their players. So I think it's a combination of that. And we're about a population, I think, of about 800,000 to 1 million, depending on where you look. So it's a decent sized city. And then Clovis is, I mentioned, is on the outskirt of Fresno. It's just east of Fresno. And they're a smaller one. I'm not quite sure how many they have population. I think it's like 150,000 to 200,000 or something like that. It's a little smaller, but they have a lot of good schools out there. They have a lot of the parents have money, and so they can access resources. So the challenge is to get the kids that don't have access to the resources. And is one of the reasons why when I do local lessons, I could easily charge, and I do, $100 to $200 per lesson for a one-on-one, but I elected to go small private group and keep it cheaper. So we charge for a 75-minute session. We do $45 per hitter, and we'll do like four in a group. If there's 5 or 6 in a group, then I drop it down to $30 per hitter per group. So I could have gone that way and charged a ton, but I didn't want to make it to where only a certain socioeconomic class could afford it, because that's me growing up. I grew up in a middle class home. It was, it wasn't lower class, but it was maybe the bottom of middle. And then we grew into the middle and closer to the upper middle. And, I knew what it was like to not have access to resources. And I cherished when my dad could pay, or my parents could pay for lessons when I was 11. It was great because I was out there working hard. My dad didn't know anything. He was a drag racer. He'll say he was a self-proclaimed nerd in high school. And my mom, cheerleader, she played softball, but she didn't know the technical aspects, anything. And so I couldn't really depend on my parents for the actual knowledge of hitting. So I had to depend on other mentors to be able to do that. So I want to make sure that me being a mentor, it's not just to a certain socioeconomic class. And I think that's a big move that's happening now, is guys like me are starting to try and go into the lower socioeconomic areas and saying, hey, let's make this work. Let's see how we can do this to make you guys better.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, because a lot of sports, it should be open to every kid, no matter what, no matter if they have a lot of money or they don't, it's not, it shouldn't matter. So I'm glad that, you've been able to open it up and give them more opportunities. It's crucial and important these days. I want to talk about, the global scope of baseball, and then sort of start bringing it down and down.
Sure.
16 million people play baseball or softball in the US, 65 million in the world, 65 million play softball or baseball in 140 different countries. Mm-hmm. It's pretty huge now. It's obviously a very global sport. California produces the most baseball players in the US. 2,311 players have made the majors from California, 24 Hall of Famers, and 4 players have had more than 100 wins above replacement, the WAR stat.
Wow.
Barry Bonds, Ted Williams, Tom Seaver, and Randy Johnson, 4 incredible, 4 of the best to ever play the game. Yeah. And it's really cool to see that you're in that hotbed, country, state, and county, and city in Fresno. It's kind of cool that you're able to impact that many lives.
Yes. Yeah. And the other challenge, what you mentioned, some guys, Ted Williams and Randy Johnson, they didn't have access to the internet back in the day. And now what's so cool, now I didn't, once I got out of Fresno State, 2003, internet was starting to get going, but it was more chat rooms, and it was things my buddy and I would pose as females in the guy chat rooms, and we'd mess with the guys, we do as young kids. And so it was that kind of stuff going on, but it wasn't like it is now, where you have access to all this information. So too much information can be a problem, But now what we can do from hittingperformancelab.com is now we can reach more people. And I didn't want to just have a local following, which we built pretty well over the last half dozen years, but we wanted to be accessed across the United States. And it was just so crazy to me when people would fly in from Tennessee, or they would fly in from Florida or Boston, or even Canada. I've had people come in from Canada and work hitting. They do, it's like their vacation. They push everything together. So they get to go to a Giants game, and then they come down, and then they hit with me, and then they go down and they go to an Anaheim Angels game, and then they come back up. So they do this move, which is awesome. So they get baseball in at the bookends, and then they get to work on baseball in the middle of that time. So I think that's great. And it's humbling. People from Ohio, all over the place, they come in, they fly in. And I just would ask my parents, I'd tell them who was coming into town. And I'd say, back in the day when I was 11, 12, would you guys allow that? If there was somebody like me in Florida, would we fly to Florida to go work with them? I mean, it's nuts to me. And you're just so blessed to have people think so highly of you to come out. So we bend over backwards. And a good story, I had a family from Tennessee come out, and it was mom and dad, and then son. And then I had a friend, mom and dad, and son. So it was the two sons were buddies, and they were 11, 12 years old at the time. And they came out, and it was hot. It was summertime. So here in Fresno, it's dry heat. It's 105 to 115. And I think that day was between 105 to 110. And the goal was we were going to do 4 hours of training. We are going to do 2 hours in the morning, starting around 9 or 10 in the morning. Then we're going to break for lunch. And then we're going to do 2 hours in the afternoon. And those 2 hours in the afternoon from 1 to 3 is what I was worried about. So we did our thing in the morning. Wasn't too bad. We were sweating a little bit. Had a nice little lunch together. And then we come back out, and it's about 105. And what's nice at the park, at the high school, it was my alma mater, Bullard, that we were working out at the time. They had the sprinklers going. So they had a guy out there, and he was turning the sprinklers on and all this stuff. So I got 11 and a 12-year-old. And I just trying to imagine, put myself in their shoes when I was their age, and doing this, and then having it be so freaking hot that they're used to humidity in Tennessee. I think humidity is a little bit more there, but not quite the 105-degree heat. And I said, so we'd break in our 2 hour thing. We'd take these little breaks, these sprinkler breaks, like every half hour. And I'd tell them, I go. And so they would go, the sprinklers on, and they would go head to toe, like hat soaked. And I'd look over, and I'd hear this, and one of them's got the sprinkler hitting him right in the back, and his shirt's all wet, and he's just complete. So they come back in from the grassy area, because there's like soccer fields and stuff, and they come back to the cage, and they were soaked from head to toe. They even had bubbles coming out of their shoes because their shoes were so soaked. And the crazy thing was, within 45 minutes, they're dry again, and I had to send them back out.
Back to being dry again that quick. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. Fun. Yeah, well, a lot of families are very dedicated to their kids and making sure that, they get every opportunity that they can. And baseball is really big in Canada here. We've got 255 players have made the majors. The biggest names, obviously, are Larry Walker, Ferguson Jenkins, the two guys that have made the Hall of Fame. Justin Morneau, Joey Votto, Vladimir Guerrero, Mike Soroka, James Paxton. One thing that Canada has a bit of an advantage of outside of other foreign countries is that we can participate in that first year player draft. So scouts can scout guys. Quite a few of them are playing in major colleges in the US, and they get scouted and they can get drafted. Some scouts do come up here. And unfortunately, most of the draft picks that have come out of Canada are only drafted by about 5 teams. The Blue Jays, obviously, because they're up here.
Right.
But the teams that seem to always draft Canadians are the Blue Jays, the Reds, the Twins, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres. And it seems like a lot of the major league teams are sort of dropping the ball, and they're not looking up here. There's a ton of talent up here, lots of great guys that should be able to, make a professional organization, and they just don't seem to be looking north of the border. Do you hear about Canadians at all when you're down there? Do you hear about Canadian baseball?
Well, I have a lot of people that buy, because I can see who's coming through when they buy a book or a course, or not so much the course because I don't see the address there, but the books because I got to ship them. And there's a lot of Canadians that are buying my stuff. Like I said, I've had Canadians come here with their kids and work with them, and some 2-3 brothers coming in and working with them.
Nice.
I think I've had some online lessons as well out of Canada. The issue of other teams not open to that, I'm not quite sure. I would say probably it could be maybe you have an old guard in there, and you have the teams that you mentioned that are pro Canada bringing players in. Not saying that the others are anti-Canada or anything, but that their sights are set there. I would say maybe those teams have a little bit more of an advantage. The other ones, again, maybe it's they're used to a certain process and they're used to a certain area of going to. Maybe it's the Dominican, or it's the other Mediterranean, the other areas that they tend to go to, and they tend to stay on that track, and maybe they don't have enough time, or I don't know what it is. But has that changed? What are those numbers? Has that changed since 2001 in the sabermetrics? Because I would think, now you have access to metrics, so who cares where they're coming from if the metrics line up? Have those numbers changed at all since 2001?
They have, yeah, they have, but it's still much slower of a process than most of us expected that are involved in the game and have seen the game. I spent years covering Major League Baseball, and I saw some initial stages where Canadians were just not looked at all, and then suddenly Larry Walker came in, he won an MVP, had a really fantastic career. Justin Morneau won an MVP, and all of a sudden, maybe we should look a little north of the border here. But it's still a much slower process than I expected. And one of the general managers that I used to talk to on a daily basis was Pat Gillick. And the one thing I loved about him was when he went to Toronto, he said, how am I going to get a bit of a competitive advantage over, these teams in the American League East that I'm having to battle, the Yankees and the Red Sox and, the teams with deep pockets. And he was one of the first guys to go to the Dominican and start getting players from there. He was one of the first guys to draft some Canadians. And all of a sudden the Blue Jays won a couple World Series. And I think all of a sudden a lot of these other general managers like, oh, what's he doing over there? Maybe I should be looking at the Dominican too. When he left the Blue Jays, he went to Baltimore, Philadelphia, but he landed in Seattle. And I got to spend quite a bit of a time with him when he was in Seattle. One season they won, I think it was 116 games, and they had a fantastic team for a stretch there. And they started actually getting guys from Japan at that time. So he was looking into another untapped market and was able to get the Rookie of the Year. And then he was able to get Ichiro Suzuki and able to start implementing some Japanese fans and players. And, it helped him have success there. And so, I notice a lot of sports, goes in waves where, they look at the success teams have, and then they start trying to copy it and emulate it. But here in Canada still, we're still waiting for, more of our guys who, I think can compete at a really high major league level to, get an opportunity.
Well, it sounds like maybe the advantage there is, and it's, again, something I've adopted. I don't care about what the gender of the person is. I don't care what their height is. I don't care what their age is. I don't care what race they are. I don't care where they come from. All I'm looking at is how their body moves in time and space. And maybe part of it is like the branding, right? The Canadian brand, the Dominican brand, and people are buying into that. I don't think that's right. Maybe there are more in Dominican. I don't know. Maybe they're not as many in Canada. Maybe there are. I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at movement, and I would just think that with all the metric stuff, that would have cleaned up a little bit, just because now we're looking at numbers. So it really doesn't matter what the player looks like or where they're from or whatever, but it should matter what the numbers pan out. And then obviously you have to look at apples to apples, right? They say Japanese baseball is like quadruple A in the whole thing. They're better than triple A, but they're not quite as good as Major League Baseball. I don't know if that's true. That's what they say, but I don't know. Again, I always talk about Saruhara O. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, Japanese star. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the Babe Ruth
like 800 home runs.
868 homers. in, I think, 20 or 22 years. I mean, he's the Babe Ruth of Japanese baseball. Played around when Hank Aaron was playing. And it was, I think on YouTube, I think did they do a home run derby together? I think they had met at some point, Hank Aaron and Saduhara O. But Saduhara O was 5'10", 173 pounds, and he lefty, 868 homers. And if you look at his swing, he's very catapult loading system based. Again, this wasn't around back then, but he figured it out somehow. And if he were alive today and being recruited into the big leagues, they would probably the major leagues would probably turn him into an Ichiro. So there's a lot of things. Another friend of mine, another example of major league, maybe not bias, but how they look through some sort of a filtered looking glass, right, at different times. A friend of mine, Aaron Miles, so he played in the big leagues for, I think, 9 to 10 years, something like that. He played with Albert Pujols on the Cardinals. He was a switch hitter, smaller guy. And so we've had quite a few conversations, good ones, like 2 hours, 3 hours, and he was telling a story about, because he was a small guy, he bat second, maybe first in the lineup. He was a setup guy. He'd put the bunt down, he'd switch hitter so he could go across. And so there came a time where he was struggling a little bit, and they sent him down. And he sent him down around, I want to say it was early 2000s. It was right around, they were starting to talk about this idea of slugging percentage and trying to get more extra base hits. So he decided, he goes, you know what? I'm going to try and just swing out of my butt and see what happens. And he wasn't doing that before. He was the precision guy. He was trying to put the ball like Tony Gwynn, trying to spray, or Ichiro, spray it around the field.
Sure.
So he started doing that, actually started doing pretty well. He's a smart guy. He had increased his homers quite a bit in a couple weeks span. And then he had a coach come up to him. Again, this is at the beginning of the metric thing, right? Revolution. Coach comes up to him and goes, Miles, you got to know your role. You got to know your role. You're not going to be a power guy. I mean, that would not be said in 2008, 2009, 2010, and he said, because I think I had asked him, what one of your regrets through playing? And he said that was one of them, that he didn't give that more of a chance. Like, he didn't give that more of a shot and take a year to do that kind of thing. So there are many factors going on, and I wouldn't take offense in Canada that there's not more guys, hopefully soon, because I believe they're all over. Whether it's Canada, Japan, China, whatever, they're all over. It's just that we're not looking. The major leagues aren't looking in those right places. It's like their attention's only in one spot, and maybe they just don't have time to go. I don't want to create excuses for them. I probably wouldn't do it like that because Larry Walker is one of my favorites. And correct me if I'm wrong, but his story was, he was a hockey guy, like us in America think every Canadian is, right?
Plays hockey, right? Exactly.
Into college, did he pick up baseball seriously in college? Was that the story? Because I had heard he was hockey for the whole time, and then he got into college and he's like, you know what, let me try baseball, and then the rest is history. Is that the true story?
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah. He's told me some interesting stories that he was just doing it as a side sport, and then he started hitting some home runs and took some notice, and then suddenly somebody's like, hey, why don't you come and play with this elite team and, give it a shot? And he's like, all right, why not? And the rest is history, like you say.
Yeah.
So,
he was one of the greatest. He was one of my favorites to emulate on the left, always from the left side, him and Ken Griffey.
Yeah. Two amazing players. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I agree with both of those. In my baseball career, which was, just played at a very minimal level, my frustrations were in a few areas. One was that I was like your friend who hit the ball in the gap so I could get singles and doubles. I never had that power. And I think a lot of people overlooked that. I think a lot of people thought, I wasn't as valuable as the guy that would get a home run every 2 or 3 games and, but he would strike out almost every at bat, except when he hit the ball, he would hit a home run. I thought I was pretty valuable. But I wish I would have been able to get this catapult loading system and be able to get some more power when I needed to. I like that you are trying to teach line drives, though. I think line drives is so crucial at trying to find those holes, trying to exploit the defense and get it into the areas where they're not, so you can get on base and score runs. When other guys do the same thing. So I never liked hitting ground balls. I liked hitting line drives in the gaps. I would look out in the field and see where they were playing me, and I would hit them where they weren't. And I loved hitting opposite field. And almost none of my teammates knew how to do that. They just, if they hit it opposite field, it's usually a fluke, and they weren't trying for that. So those were the two frustrations I had. And it was very challenging for me to ever see anybody teaching kids the line drive and the hitting into the opposite field and those holes and gaps.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of this launch angle craze, and launch angle is really just a measurement. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a number that a calculator spits out, a very expensive calculator, some of these, right? Hit tracks.
Right.
The problem is that if it's taught incorrectly, meaning hitters now are hitting pop flies, a lot of these coaches, especially my buddies who I played ball with, they would rather have a weak ground ball than a weak fly ball, because it requires a player to field it cleanly, throw it cleanly, and then the receiver has to catch it cleanly. So they'd rather roll the dice, right? On
more mistakes that way. Right.
A high school coach is not going to like a player flying out 4 times in a row, going 0 for 4. They're just not going to do it. So part of the game, I think, is lost right now. I think it's starting to come around, but part of the game that's lost because of the launch angle craze is the precision side, is what you're talking about. The skill set that you had a really good skill set. And some, Joey Votto, Larry Walker, those guys were very good across the field. We call them horizontals, adjusting your horizontals, which is line to line, and then adjusting your verticals. So we don't call them launch angles because we don't want the coaches to get upset that don't like launch angle. So we call them verticals, right? So there's this idea of precision. And a good friend of mine, Lee Como, he's a golf guy. He's like me, but in golf. He understands spinal engine, springy fascia. And interesting talking to him. I met him about 2014 or 15. So it was early on in my journey, and he had been in the spinal engine, springy fascia stuff for probably 5 years before me. So he'd already been ruminating on this stuff and playing with it and things, but applying it to the golf side. So in golf, think about the amount of foul territory in golf. The objective of golf is to get it to the pin in the least amount of strokes possible. So what I say is, out of 360 degrees of foul territory, there's 359 degrees of foul, and there's 1 degree of fair territory in golf, right? Because you want to hit it as straight as possible.
Straight as possible, where you're aiming. Yeah.
You're dealing in yards and not feet. So you're dealing in 300 yards, not 300 feet or 400 feet. So the ball has more of a chance to deviate off of the path. So if your club face and your ball don't hit square, well, then what's going to happen if we got a slight hook, like a righty, and I'm kind of bringing my club face this way a little bit, even 1 millimeter, by the end of 300 yards, that ball is boom, hooked, right? Same for slice. So some of the things that Lee talked to me about made a lot of sense. And he's got a daughter who is playing, I think she's going back. She got a college scholarship, and she plays golf. No, she's doing golf now. I think she stopped softball because she had a couple of injuries. And he taught her he took those principles and had her apply them to softball. So he had her just trying to hit. They'd set up little targets out on the field, on the softball field, and he'd throw to her and he'd tell her, hit that target, hit that target, hit that target. And they would be from far to near. It could be a target at where the shortstop was, or a target in right center, or a target in left field down the line. And no matter where he threw it, he'd say, I don't care where I throw it. I want you to hit that target over there. I want you to hit that target over there. And there was a conversation that Joey Votto had. I have it on my site somewhere. If somebody just searches Joey Votto hitting or something, it'll come up. And Joey Votto, I think it was like a 3 or 4 minute conversation he was having with Eric Burns or somebody from MLB Central. And he was talking about this idea that, it was funny, he was talking about Trout. He goes, a guy like Trout, where Joey Votto, I mean, he could do the same thing. But he was talking about Trout. If you were sitting there with BP with Trout and you told Trout to do the same thing, told Trout to, I want you to one hop the wall in right center. I want you to hit a one hop screamer to the shortstop. I want you to foul the ball off out in foul territory to the first baseman. I want you, anything you told him to do, for the most part, it would get done. And so Votto, and I think Burns, whoever is interviewing him, goes, Joey, you could do that too. And he's like, I know, you know how Joey is. He's kind of he's a card man. I love his sense of humor. Very sarcastic. But it's the same idea of precision. And I think what people don't get when they're teaching the instructors, team coaches, this launch angle thing, that's a one-dimensional metric where you're telling a player to hit it in that zone there without really any concept of, hey, we got 90 degrees to work with here. And just because, and Perry Husband, another friend of mine, he taught me that it's not so much the back third part of the cage that we're looking for. Those are what we call quality mistakes. That part of those swings, those 20 to 30 degree launch angles that are doubles and dingers, we call them, those happen because you're slightly under center. So if you look at the major league in general, 20% of the time is 20% line drive rate is average line drive rate. Now, Mike Trout's probably 27%, he's above average, but your average is 20. Your average ground ball rate is 43%, usually round down to 40 because I'm not a math guy. So make it easy numbers. So 40% below. The fly ball rate, I think, is 37 or 38% is the average. So we say 40. So 40 up, 40 down, and 20 in the middle. So what's happening is the best in the world on average are hitting it right on center, barrel to ball 20% of the time. And that's about your 20 to 15 degree launch angle, right? We call it hitting it back through the tube. So what you're talking about when you played is being able to hit it back through the tube, hit that line drive so that it's even if it's a single in the outfield, that's fine, because if we're shooting to hit the ball back through the tube, which means the ball's coming in, imagine the pitcher releasing the ball, he's throwing it through a tube and it continues to the tube to the hitter and you're just hitting it back through it. You're sending the ball back through the tube. So if we practice, this is what we do with our hitters on the line drive thing, is if we hit it back through the tube, if we concentrate on that all the time, even if it goes above or below it, we're always trying to make adjustments to get back to it. And what happens is, what I found is that if you focus on the tube, you're going to get more of those 20 to 30 degree angle doubles or dingers. And I know you said you don't like the ground ball, but you know what? Ground balls that are over in the big leagues, I think they're over 94 miles or 95 miles an hour. Your error rate goes up on your defense, right? And your batting average goes up. I think Perry Husband said that any ground ball over 100 miles an hour, the batting average is like 750. So ground ball, I used to hate ground balls 3-4 years ago. I used to hate it, right? Ground balls, yuck, and get it top third part. But you know what? The reality is if you hit it hard, your ball exit speeds up, that batting average has a better chance of being up, right? So whether you're hitting a one hopper down or you're hitting a 20 to 30 degree launch double and dinger, if you're shooting for that middle, you're going to get more of those. And that's what we teach our hitters. We want to make sure that we're shooting for the middle. We're aim small, we miss small.
That's brilliant. Yeah. 750 batting average. I take ground balls every day. If I could hit 750 all the time. I want to talk about how you deal with kids with the failure of baseball. You're going up to bat 10 times and you're not getting a hit. Typically 7 of those times. Maybe 8 of those times. So that's a lot of failure. I need to mention my partners and sponsors, but as soon as I finish that, I want to talk about how do you teach kids how to deal with failure and keep continuing on and trying to get better. Okay.
Yep. Go for it.
Okay. Our partners and sponsors are very instrumental and crucial to this podcast. And we have a really great partner and sponsor in Anchor FM. They've been fantastic at posting on multiple podcast platforms for us, and they call themselves the easiest place to make a podcast. So you just go to Anchor FM, follow the instructions there, and you can do exactly what Joey and I are doing here, create your own podcast at any topic that you like and you're passionate about. I want to talk about Verbero. Verbero is a hockey equipment and apparel company. They're an industry leader in performance, technology, and value. And I always mention this V350 stick. It's the lightest stick on the market, 350 grams. It's explosive, powerful. And if you want to impress your teammates and you impress the people that you're playing against, get this V350 stick in your hands and you will. You'll score a lot of goals. Pampas Impossibilities, they design and sell dried florals, floral arrangements, and do installations. They're designers of handmade things with West Coast vibes at very reasonable prices. And last but not least, Forever Living. They're the aloe vera company. They grow and manufacture aloe vera-based products for health and beauty. And you just have to go to CompleteSportsMedia.com, and there's tons of details on all those companies, and you can purchase products at very reasonable prices and discounts as well. So thanks as always to our partners and sponsors for all their support. So Last year in baseball, DJ LeMahieu was the number one hitter in average. He hit 364. And not that many guys hit 300 last year. Typically, guys are hitting between 200 and 300 in the majors. Maybe a couple handfuls are hitting above 300. So that means even the best of the best are failing 65, 70, 80% of the time. And somehow they were able to deal with that failure and keep going and keep going. Kids, when they aren't good at something, they typically go to their parents and say, I hate this. This sucks. I don't want to play this anymore. I only want to do something that I'm good at. And hitting the ball is one of the hardest things to do in sports. So how do you tell parents how to deal with their kids with the failure of hitting a baseball?
That's a great question, Darren. And that is one that is difficult and challenging in today's day of video games and the tablets and everything. I mean, I got two kids. I got an 8-year-old boy, and I have a soon to be 5-year-old girl who's going on 16 already. And she's a little less on the devices. She likes to dance and sing and act and do different things. But the boy is into that. He's competitive into the video game. So it's difficult. And part of that is limiting time. But I think at the core of it all, there was a book that I read by Dr. Carol Dweck. She was a psychologist out of, I think, Stanford and Columbia. Wrote a book called Mindset. Great book. And in Mindset, very simple, she talks about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And you can really compare when you just hear, when you know what each one means. Fixed mindset being that you're born with it, you're good at it because you're born with it. A lot of times associated with good job, and there's really no, what does that good job mean? And the kid doesn't know that, right?
Right. Okay.
And then you have growth mindset, which says that you have to work for it. And some of those out there will say, well, Ted Williams he was born to hit, and he was. And there's another book I'll mention just real quick is The Sports Gene. The guy's last name's Epstein. Brilliant guy. And he talked about that if somebody tells you that somebody's born with it 100%, or that 100% that they have really good work ethic, that they're both wrong. There's a little bit of both. You can't say Ted Williams was born with 100%, because the guy worked hard. If you read any of his autobiographies or biographies, the guy worked really hard. I mean, he was the one that his parents were never home, and he'd stay out at night. He'd be locked out of the house, and he's swinging the bat for hours and hours and hours. So don't tell me that he's just 100% talent, right?
Right.
So this idea of work ethic, like teaching your kids, giving them praise, it's all about praise. So there's fixed mindset praise, like good job. And then there's growth mindset praise, which would be in the good job scenario. If your kid is jumping on the trampoline, you don't just say, they say, mommy, look at me. And you go, good job, Sally, good job, right? They don't know what that means. But if you say, good job, Sally, I see how high, it looks like you're almost jumping out of that trampoline. So if you say good job, but follow it with what you're observing as being the exceptional act, right? Nice. So then now Sally knows that, oh, I got praised for jumping higher, so I'm going to try and jump higher, right? So I think to deal with the failure, it all comes back for parents to praise based on, first, read Dr. Carol Dweck's book. So give you an idea what fixed versus growth is. And some of us are giving fixed mindset cues, and that's okay. I did too. And sometimes my inner monologue is that way, but you want to live more in the growth mindset world. And if you have the talent, if you were born with some talent, that growth side is really going to make you excel. So saying things like with my hitters, I'll tell them, I might say good, but it might be something that we're working on at the time. So say if it's a drill where we're working on the verticals, so we're trying to get them to hit it through the tube. And if I see them, they'll hit a pop fly. And then they know their next adjustment needs to be a chopper. Like they need to do the exact opposite. And if I see a chopper, I'll say good job, but I'll say, that's more of a neutral outcome. We want to see it go back through the tube. But I'll tell them good job, and they'll know what that's about. But if we go through a hitting session and I say good job, that doesn't work. So the language and cues you use matter, fixed versus growth.
I like that. Yeah, very smart. You do mention quite a few authors through your books. You give a lot of nice quotes. You have a lot of experts as well. I'm just going to list off some of them that I wrote down. Daniel Robertson, Sean Sherman. You mentioned Perry Husband already, Justin Lewis. You had Curtis Nelson, Jed Johnson, Mark Palacios. Yeah, it was nice to see a lot of experts and hear their quotes and see the things that they were bringing to it. It wasn't just about hitting. There was so many other aspects coming into this whole system and principle.
Yeah, I think I'm a big proponent in all ships rise with the tides. So I'm into helping anybody and everybody that has a similar growth mindset or progressive mindset where they use the scientific method. We call them mad scientists. Like Perry Husband's a good friend of mine. I consider him a mad scientist. Daniel Robertson just got done playing. He played in the bigs for quite a few years and then had a good extensive minor league ball system. Very smart guy, wants to be a GM of a franchise someday, and he'll do a great job with that. He's very much question oriented. He read my stuff. He was in AAA at the time, and he says, hey, we're going to be in town. We're going to be playing the Grizzlies. I think he was playing for the Diamondbacks or the Rays at the time. And the Grizzlies was our Fresno. At the time, it was the Giants AAA team. And I go, oh, cool. And he goes, you want to meet for lunch? And we can meet for an hour or whatever. And I said, yeah, of course. Of course. Anytime I get to meet with a AAA big leaguer, of course. Love to talk hitting, right? So we meet. We ended up turning an hour into 3 hours. And awesome. We're talking about hitting, standing at their table. And he's showing me some things. I'm showing him some things. And what I love about him is that he's read and dug into my stuff. He's read and dug into other people's stuff. And he's a questioner. He questions what somebody's saying, and he goes and researches and he tries it out for himself. And what works, he takes it. What doesn't work, he throws out. And he loves my approach. There's some of it he doesn't agree with, which is fine, because if you look at the Manhattan Project during World War II, you had a lot of really smart people on that. You had physicists, you had Albert Einstein, you had Dr. Richard Feynman, who was kind of a generalist when it came to a lot of the mathematics and biology and chemistry. Those guys didn't agree with each other on everything either, but where everybody agreed was as close to the truth as you can get. And so when we take a lot of these experts and we bring them in, and you mentioned Sean Sherman, and he's an expert in human movement. David Weck, same thing, human movement. You have some of the other guys are technicians like me. They're mechanical guys. So I like to get a potpourri of surrounding expertise in this area of hitting, because it's not just hitting, it's movement, it's nutrition, it's we have some guys showcases. So recruiting, right? Coaches that have Rob Bruno, who is the head of NorCal baseball group, and they have a lot of kids. It's more of a select team where you're chosen to play in that group, and they have like 16, 17, 18 U's, and his job is to help and get them out, get the word out, and get those kids recruited into D1 systems, possibly getting into the draft and stuff like drafted. So you have all these kind of guys, and it's all that's all part of the system. That's all part of the factors that weigh into a high school kid that's coming up as a freshman, sophomore, junior, that he or she has to think about as they go. And so knowing where to go, because I'm not an expert in what Rob Bruno does, putting these team of select players together. I'm just a technician. I'm just a specialist when it comes to hitting. If it's hitting that you're looking for, then that's me. If it's team coaching, I can do it, because I've worked with 8U and 9U, but I can't do it in terms of high school, college, and professional. Like I don't coach teams among that kind of thing. So again, I'm a technician, but it's nice to know where to go. If it's a movement issue, maybe I should look at David Weck's stuff, who talks a lot about sprint speed and using different tools to make yourself faster. Or is it Sean Sherman, where you've had these injuries, or maybe you sit a lot during the day and your movements have a lot of compensation in it. Well, Sean Sherman can come in and he can remove a lot of those compensatory movements and get you moving how you're supposed to move, how a guy like Miguel Cabrera moves and things like that. So that's the reason why. Some of these are holes in my own system. I know a little bit about everything, but I know who to go to, who's the expert in that area.
You mentioned Exercise. I like the aspect of workouts, exercise. I saw yoga mentioned, kettlebells, the sideways bends, the Rotex motion with ropes and clubs and things. I like that. Yeah, you're incorporating some working out techniques and ways of moving, so that yeah, you're more fluid in your swing.
Yeah. And Darren, it's not all about strength conditioning. So I grew up going through the traditional swing down, swing through. It was the stay up the middle. It was these generalized terms. And I didn't know what I knew now. So at the college level, when I mentioned your practices go from 1.5 hour to 2 hour to 4 hour practices, well, there's only a certain amount of time in the day. There's only so much energy that you can expend to get reps in, to get better. So my thing was, okay, maybe I can get stronger in the weight room. And strength conditioning is great, and it has its place, and it is a good thing. But if you do not address the human movement issues that you have, whether it be from injury, whether it be from sitting too much and being sedentary, because athletes nowadays, 80% of the time are sitting, especially now with all this, the homeschooling going on, sitting on in front of the Zoom, in front of a computer screen. It's even worse than it was before. So I'd even say 90% of the time, right? Right. So if it's sitting, injury, anything like that, you have to move better, because you're going to hit a certain point. You're going to hit a limitation or hit a plateau in your strength conditioning, your performance side of movement, that in order to bust through that, you need to move better. And those guys you mentioned, Sean Sherman, from David Weck to Dr. Joe Lacaze was the Rotex motion, and other guys in the experts. Those are the guys you go to move better, so that now, even though David Weck isn't a hitting guy, he's a movement guy. And when you get a movement guy getting you moving like you're supposed to move, now your hitting is just going to be that much better. And for me, it makes my job easier as a technician, because now I don't have to, what I'm going to teach you, you're going to upload, your body's going to be able to upload just like that. You're not going to have issues with trying to get the movement down, because your body's moving like it should. So an ankle can cause a big issue. An immobile ankle can cause big issues when it comes to lower half movements. So if we can remove that, now we can move like we're supposed to move. And again, your movements, you download them so much faster when you're moving better.
I love it. Yeah, this really excites me. I can't wait to actually share this with a lot of the local coaches and kids and people in this baseball community. I can't wait to share this podcast with friends. When you mentioned Oakland A's, one of my friends is a huge A's fan, grew up in the Bay Area. Hendricks was able to be a guest here once too. And yeah, I can't wait to share it with him. Cool. I can't wait to share it with one of the guys that's instrumental with our local minor league team. They are affiliated with the Toronto Blue Jays here. They're called the Vancouver Canadians. His name is Rob Fay, and he was a guest here on a podcast recently as well. Cool. I can't wait to share it with friends that have kids that are in ball. I have a friend, his name is Todd, and he has 2 daughters that play softball, and they're starting to get into their middle teenage years. And he's become just in love with the sport, obsessed with watching them, trying to coach them, teach them. One thing that really I really liked was that you think that kids can probably hit twice as far with this system, especially girls in softball can hit about twice as far as they were hitting before they can implement that. So I'm excited that, yeah, there's this many people that I can share this with, and we can sort of direct them to you, and you can start the process.
Yeah, get it into Canada, far and wide. See, our goal from this call is to get more Canadians in the big leagues, or Canadian girls into national fast pitch professional softball. That's the goal. And again, this is free. People can digest it. They can do their own research. I have 330, maybe even 340 free blog posts on my thing, on my blog. And you can just search whatever you're thinking about. You can search. There are categories that you can click that interest you, that you want to go into. So there's a lot of free stuff. Again, we're talking about low, medium, upper socioeconomic areas. We want to create opportunities where we level the playing field for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're you got a lot of money, you don't have a lot of money. I mean, the books even, I mean, $20 I know is a lot for some. The books being on Amazon, and some of them I'm working on doing like a $9.95. So you basically get the book for free. You're just paying shipping and handling. I'm working on that for the Swing Smarter, the new book right now, but I don't have that there, but it's $20 on Amazon. But even that is okay. Cause I charge in a one-on-one, I'll charge $100. So $20 is really not that much, but you also got a lot of the free option there. And sometimes I'll have like every 90 days, I'll do a free giveaway for the PDF version of the book. So we'll give away hundreds of copies of that. I mean, I probably Catapult loading system alone, I've probably given out 8,500 copies for free in a giveaway. So my goal isn't, I mean, of course you want to make some money because my time is worth something, but that's not my whole goal. My whole goal is to get this out there and to improve just hitting in general everywhere, especially Canada, having to do with our talk today.
Yeah. Well, definitely hope that this can really help so many people. I guess because of COVID, we've had a closed border with the U.S., Canada. So a lot of kids that you said were able to come down and catch Giants games, Angels games, and then come to you. I don't think that's a reality for them this spring and into this year. You've been able to do a bit of a shift with COVID and put a lot online, so they have that ability to learn a lot of these techniques online, don't they?
Yeah, they can go to my site. I just revamped it and it's pretty much done. And the way it is now, it's a lot easier for people to find if they do want to take the next step and go pass free. There's the online lessons there. It's right at the top. If they go onto their computer, there's 3 links at the top. One is for the courses, another is for the online lessons, and then the last one's like for search, I think. So it's a lot easier to find the courses. I have a quiz there, a quiz that'll help take them. It'll ask them a few questions to gauge where they're at. Are they a parent? Are they a team coach? Are they an instructor? And then it'll ask them what their knowledge base is. Or they feel like they're more amateurish in this zone? Are they like intermediate? Are they more of an expert, well versed on it? And then it'll ask them, are you interested in building more power, hitting more line drives, or getting on time more often? So it'll ask them those questions, and based on the answers to those questions, it'll recommend which courses, books, whatever are going to be right for them. So I've tried to make that a little bit more user friendly. Before you'd log on and you'd see links to different featured posts and things like that, but people were still having a hard time going around, and they'd say, well, how do I, if I want to go online lessons with you, how do I do that? And so it was just too many questions. So now it's in a way, it's a lot easier. So if somebody in Canada, I know the whole situation, hopefully it clears up soon, but the online thing is a great option for people who want to go that far. And most of mine, just for those out there, most of my online lessons, it's rare that I'll have somebody right away that just heard about me from this podcast and said, I want to sign up for online lessons, because it takes a little bit of, you got to earn my trust a little bit. So they'll snoop around on the site for a little bit, maybe go on my YouTube and look at some videos. Typically it's about a 3 to 8 month zone there where they start to feel comfortable and they go, you know what, let's do the online lessons. So take your time, do your research. I don't want to, hey, do it now, 3, 2, 1, do it now. I don't want to make you feel like you have to make that kind of a decision.
Right. Okay. So list your website, list your social media. How do people get, I know there's a few websites and I know there's ways of getting you to tell the viewers and listeners how they can reach you.
Sure. Thanks, Darren. Yeah. So hittingperformancelab.com, and that's the website. You can pretty much access anything that you're looking for there, like we just talked about. On socials, you can search me, just put Hitting Performance Lab into Facebook. You can, same thing, Twitter. I think Twitter, it's at HitPerfLab. I think it's supposed to be Hit Performance Lab, HitPerfLab. On Instagram, I think you just search Hitting Performance Lab on any one of those. YouTube, same thing. You can search me on Google, just put Hitting Performance Lab, or even Joey Myers, and I'll pop up. We've been doing a lot of this whole COVID thing. We got to shift gears and do a little bit more on the marketing side. So we did a lot more search engine optimization. So we've really made leaps and bounds in since early September we started. So just search in search terms, you'll start to see us pop up for certain search terms. But if you put Joey Myers in baseball, I'll pop up. I'll be there on Google. So it shouldn't be too too difficult to find, but they can always reach out to you if they, who was that guy again? What was his name?
True. Yeah. I get that a lot. I really do. So, okay. Well, I'm glad we covered so much. Why don't we just talk about a couple of fun subjects first? How about the sign stealing scandal in Houston? What were your thoughts about that one?
Oh man, I love that one. It's funny because I've talked to major leaguers, former major leaguers, minor leaguers, high school guys, or not high school, college guys, and then some of my buddies that are in the hitting aid industry, like the backsman tee guys, about it. So my big thing is there is sign stealing in baseball and maybe softball. I don't know how.
Always been there. I remember trying to steal signs as a kid, even, right?
Yeah, there's nothing against sign stealing unless you're using AI, artificial intelligence, and using computers and calculators. That's where I draw the line. If a teacher tells the class, the math class, no calculators, you have to use your brain or you got to use your chicken scratch, them's the rules. So that's what you got to do. And if you come out with your calculator, that's cheating. You can't do that. That's a competitive advantage over everybody else. Now, one question one of my readers had posed during this thing, put it into perfect perspective. If you were a pitcher and you had to pitch to two hitters, and only one hitter, you pick one of those hitters, would you pitch to the hitter who was roided out of his mind? Okay, Jose Canseco think. Or would you pitch to the hitter that knew everything you were going to throw and where you're going to throw it?
Yeah, steroids every time, right?
I'm going to take my chance with the steroid guy. That's just what I'm going to do. So, I heard from what I've heard from former major leaguers, from current ones, from pro guys, is that it was very prevalent in the game. It wasn't just the Astros. There was Boston, there were the Mets, there was a lot of them. So then if it's pretty prevalent, and think PED scandal, right? Where possibly at least 50%, if you take Jose Canseco's word for it, at least 50% were roiding or HGH or taking some sort of PED, right? If that were the case, then it's either you make it uniform amongst everybody and everybody has to adjust, kind of like what I've heard in the Olympics. I've heard that steroids are in the Olympics, but there's a certain minimum that they can do, because training 8 hours a day, the human body can't handle that. You can't eat nutrition wise. Maybe some people can argue with me about this out there that really know their stuff, but I find it hard to believe that you can train 8 hours a day like Olympians do, and your body does not break down and you can eat enough to counter that. I think it's impossible. So I've heard from past Olympic judges that they do let them take steroids, but there's a certain minimum. And when people take over that, that's when they get busted.
Yeah.
So if the cheating, the sign stealing and stuff, if that's prevalent, then that should be open to everybody. It's either open to everybody or open to nobody. So if some people are doing it, some people aren't doing it, well, then that's a problem. You either say everybody doesn't do it, like we're not allowing it, or we do it. So I don't agree with how it was. Even if it was some were doing weren't, I say leave it out. At least the computer side of it, leave it out. If you can use your brain and you can pick signs and you can do that, more power to you, because you're a smart dude. Don't tell anybody you're doing it. But if you can figure it out with your brain, I'll tell you what, I'll tip my cap to you, because you're a lot smarter than I would be in that scenario. But the one thing that I think should have happened, and I think it might be too late for it, is to take the ring away from the Astros, to take it away. Don't give it to the Dodgers, because they did lose, and we don't know if they would have won without it, but just no ring that year. Like, take it away. And if you take it away, now all the other teams that were thinking of doing the trash can bang in and all that stuff, they're going to think twice, because we might not be champions. See, that was the problem. I think the commissioner, MLB, let him have the ring. Let him have it. Took it away, and he should have took it away.
Let him have the ring and didn't really punish any of the players. So that was, very strange. I don't see the big deterrent there. They lost the general manager, they lost the coach, but they kept the ring. So,
and their money
seems like it was worth it to me.
Yeah, I think they got a $2.5 million slap on the wrist.
Yeah,
big deal.
Big deal. Exactly. You mentioned some books, so I'm going to just pull a couple off the shelves here real quick. Here's Jose Canseco's book. That's it's hard to see because of the light. But this is the Juiced Jose Canseco book.
I read that.
Yeah, this is the Astro Ball.
Okay.
I recommend reading that. They do talk about science stealing a little bit in here, and they never talked about garbage cans and calculators and that kind of thing like you mentioned. But yeah, two really amazing books. And you talked about steroids a little bit there. Obviously, when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa went on their home run chase, trying to chase down Roger Maris, that really put a lot of juice back into baseball. It rejuvenated a sport that had taken a big hit because of a lockout and missing a whole World Series. Where do you stand on the steroid issue? Obviously, that was hitting home runs. Now you're trying to create something where it's natural. It's using your body instead of using some drugs to increase your ability to hit the home run farther.
Right. So again, it goes back to that. If you're going to let some guys do it, but not others, there's a problem. So it's either you let them all do it at a minimum. And I believe under doctor's prescription, I think it could be a good thing. I mean, you got to think about 162 game grind. There's no other sport that goes through a grind like that. You can argue football, 16 weeks, where you're getting in a car crash pretty much every week. You can argue basketball's got maybe half those games, 82, 84, whatever it is, but 162 games and actually even more than that, if you account for spring training and if you account for the teams that go on in the playoffs. I mean, you're close to a 200 plus game system or games. And so it's a grind. And you gotta figure out how to go through that. So if it's a minimum, you do a minimum. But how fun was that to watch? It was pretty fun.
Fantastic. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. I tuned in every single solitary night to see who was hitting another home run. It was really fun. I would welcome seeing 50, 60, 70 home run seasons again.
Yep. And if you think about to bodybuilding, who likes to go? I mean, I do, but if you're going to count how many people go as a crowd to watch the ones that are roided out of their minds versus the ones that are natural bodybuilders, I've been to both and they're both fun to watch, but I know from training side, I understand the natural bodybuilding side is more, it's movement. They're doing choreographed type stuff. And I know the roided guys are, but they're a little less, I mean, they can't even itch their own butt. So, but which one's more fun to watch? It'd be interesting to see what the bigger crowd would be, a natural versus a roided out of their mind bodybuilding. People like to see the freaks, they just, whoa, how big, that guy has no neck and he can't even reach around and scratch his own butt.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're creating something where maybe they don't have to go to steroids. This exit velocity seems to be, the biggest key. And page 37 of your latest book really talks about the exit velocity, breaks it down into a chart and a graph. And that's where I think you're really hitting the mark really well, because you're able to figure out how to get young people and adults to increase their exit velocities, and they can hit a lot more home runs. And we won't have to subject ourselves to seeing steroided freaks.
Exactly. Well, and that's the interesting thing, right? It all depends on what your default operating system is if you're teaching hitting. Some people, they just want to cut down on strikeouts. So everything they teach their hitter is very defensive. There's no, ball exit speed's kind of second to third down the list. It's not really a big deal. But on that list that you're talking about, I got that from medium.com, and it showed batting average and ball exit speed. And I think it started off at 92 ball exit speed, batting average is 250. And then it goes to 94, batting average jumps 100 points to 350. Then to 96, it goes to 450. 98, it goes to 550. And then anything over 100 miles an hour is like 750. So our goal, our standard, or our default operating system when we teach our hitters is all based around ball exit speed. So every decision we make sure we maintain that ball exit speed, because if we have the horizontal velocity, if we have the speed coming off the bat, We can always adjust the verticals. We can always adjust the horizontals to that, but you got to have the ball exit speed, because without ball exit speed, it doesn't matter if it's a one hopper ground ball, a line drive, or the dinger and double. As long as you're hitting it hard, we can hit for high average. And that's the problem, is that we're not hitting enough line drives. We're getting under or uppercutting too much. And that's why 200 strikeouts in a season have become normal and customary. Could you imagine the days when Joe DiMaggio hit 360? I always get the numbers mixed up, so I could be wrong. 362 homers, and he only struck out 360 times. What?
Unreal. Hey? Yeah, that's thing of the past. That's incredible. What a stat that is, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing a couple hundred strikeouts a year because guys are just swinging for the fences all the time now. Yeah. So my favorite team was always the Yankees. My grandfather taught me baseball, told me about the history of Joe DiMaggio and all the legends that played in New York. Because I'm a Canadian, and spent a lot of time in Ontario, Canada's only professional team since the Expos left. I've become a Jays fan. It's hard to reconcile that because they're in the same division. But I also am a fan of the A's, and I'm really glad that you're a fan of them too. This Moneyball was one of my favorite books of all time, and a great movie. Amazing that you were able to have a guy that could implement that system, give a small market team an opportunity to compete against the large market teams. I've been more of a fan of American League ball than National League ball. I do have a couple favorite teams in the National League as well, but good luck to your A's. They seem to always pull it out. They seem to always go to the playoffs and have pretty successful years, even though despite such a small difference in payroll compared to the big teams out there.
Yeah, they just can't seem to push it through. But yeah, they compete though. I mean, they're a great case study when it comes to the money, the metrics and the money, how all that's weighed out. And what's interesting is we can take metrics. I can look at a guy's metrics. I can look at his, not only his line drive rate, fly ball, and his ground ball rate, but I can look at his pull rate, his oppo rate, and his center rate. And we can look at, based on the league average, what that should be. And we can see the deficiencies in there. And then I can go to the mechanical things that are going to fix that. So we can use metrics in a way, and that's part of the problem right now. I think you have the former players and coaches, and then you have the stat heads that think that their way is 100%. Just like what Epstein said in the Sports Gene, is that if somebody says that you're born with it, or somebody says that it's all about hard work, 100% each way, they're both wrong. Right? It's not all about the numbers, and it's not all about the feeling. The gut feeling is what that side talks about. It's both, like both work, and you have to be able to use both and be, you can take numbers, and then you can take the feel, and you can match those up, and they don't all the time, they don't match up. So if you hear a guy like Mike Trout says that he tries to get on top of the ball for his first swings when he gets on the field before a game, or you hear Pujols say, I swing down, or Alex Rodriguez says the same thing. You hear these guys, Barry Bonds, I swing down or knob down. Well, I used to think 3 or 4 years ago, these guys are mad. What are they talking about? They don't know what they're talking about, right? And then people get mad at you because, well, how are you telling Barry Bonds what he knows or doesn't know, right? Well, both can be right. So even though Bonds says he swings down, but you look at his numbers, you look at his swing actually on video, and he's not swinging down. He's got this little bit of a Nike swoosh sign to his swing. But it's the feel that he has in order to get that. If he doesn't think swing down or be top hand dominant, then you're going to see him swinging 2 up. And he would have been a guy that struck out over 200 times a game, and he would only hit 220 to 250. But he prided himself on hitting 300 and hitting 30 plus homers and doing it all and striking out less than 100 times in a season. So what these guys are saying, there's got to be something to it. You can't ignore it. They know something. And what I say is they're the best feel models in the world. They know exactly what your body needs to feel in order to get what they get. They might not be able to explain it technically. Some players do, like Votto, I think, is really good at explaining himself technically. Josh Donaldson, even Jose Bautista, some of these guys are good. Daniel Murphy's another one. They're good at explaining technically what they're doing. But for the most part, these big leaguers, these really good, these Hall of Famers, they're really good at feel. if you want to get field cues that are going to help your kids, those are the guys you want to listen to. But you can't take it literally. You can't take what Pujols is saying is swing down and tell all your kids to actually swing down. Like, it's just a field cue, right?
Right. Yeah, I get you. I get what you're saying there. I think Ted Williams was considered the greatest hitter of all time and the greatest swing coach of all time. So let's hope one day we're talking that you've taken over that mantle. You've become the top hitting guy of all time. I loved your books. I love this podcast. Thank you so much for reaching out to us and asking to be a guest. And I really enjoyed myself here, and I can't wait to do this again. We're going to have to revisit this in the spring or summertime and talk about how things are going now. And I'm sure we'll have a ton more things to talk about.
I love that, Darren. And thank you so much too. And sorry about the beeping in the background. It's what happens when you got a house office. I'm in my bedroom now. I had to get back here, but I didn't take our little thing when the door opens, the little beep happens. So next time I'll make sure that I get rid of that. But hey, I appreciate your time, making the time up there. One of our cozy neighbors up in Canada. Hopefully our borders open up here pretty soon, because our baseball, we got to get that baseball flowing again and coming up and down. So hopefully sooner than later.
I'll come make a trip once they open the borders and things are good again. And thanks again for your time. I really appreciate this. It was a lot of fun, and I'll let you know the feedback I get, and we'll go from there. And I'm sure we're going to sell a ton of things up here in Canada, because people are wanting to be better hitters here and trying to compete with those California guys down there.
Our goal is to get you guys to do that.
Okay. Thanks, Joey. All right. Take care of yourself. All right. Bye for now. All right. Yeah. See you later. Take care. Okay. Yeah. That was fantastic. What an incredible time we had there. It was really great to be able to talk to somebody that's so knowledgeable about hitting and has so many aspects of trying to improve so many people's lives. It's so much better when you can go to the ballpark and you can hit better yourself, or you can see your kids performing much better and having success, getting on base, hitting home runs. They said chicks dig the long ball. You remember that commercial back in the day when McGuire and Sosa were going crazy? It was a lot of fun, and great to have Joey as a guest. Really good, fun guy, knows his baseball so well, so in and out. And this was a blast for me. Hope it was enjoyable for you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our partners and sponsors as always. Really take care of yourself. I'm here in COVID purgatory. I was in close contact with someone that tested positive for COVID, so I'm in quarantine for 2 weeks here. And so we're going to probably send a lot of podcasts your way over the next little bit here, and appreciate your time as always. Look forward to your feedback, and take care of yourself. Love you. Bye for now.